and he wore a red cap. A story from the House of Cain by StoryMan-Jack. Anna Stein sat on her old large brick of a suitcase and waited on the lonely road for another ride. She finally turned 18. She'd run out late one night rather than argue with her filthy family about college again. Fuck them, she huffed where she sat. And as soon as she could find a doc who would make her sterile, she would move on. She had friends once, but her parents had driven them off. It was all her fault, you see. She'd been in an accident, a prom pregnancy, and both her parents had to give up college, scholarships, and what everyone insisted would have been an exemplary life. Instead, they had her, and they reminded her that they were poor and hungry and miserable because of her every single day of her life. So that's why she left. She stood watching an old pickup truck approach. She stuck out her thumb and waited to get passed by again. Most people didn't pick up hitchhikers nowadays. But the old blue Ford slowed and stopped. Anna picked up her pack and suitcase and approached the passenger window, where an older man looked at her through the portal. He was rugged, but looked like he had been fair once. He wore a baseball cap with no logo, but was just red, a deep, dark, shiny red, and a red flannel shirt hung loosely upon him. "Where you going, lady?" he growled, but had a slight smile. "Texas," she said. "Fort Worth, I think," she said. His face took on an expression of disbelief. "Where are you coming from, child?" "L.A." She leaned on the passenger's door and watched the man over a cardboard box that sat in the passenger seat of the old blue Ford pickup truck. He shook his head. "Pretty thing like you? Lucky you haven't been disappeared out here in the desert." He threw the shifter and the steering column into park and got out of the truck. "Name's Red," he said, and moved the cardboard box to the bed of the truck and tied it down. Once finished, he looked at the sky. "Don't suppose it'll get rained on?" Anna was curious. "So, what's in there?" Red chuckled. "Just some caps." His red cap gleamed in the sunlight. "Want me to put your suitcase back here? I have another strap." Anna clutched the suitcase to her and shook her head. I'd rather just hold on to it. It's all I have in the world." The older man stared at her. "Kid, what the hell is wrong with you?" he asked. "By all rights, by the statistics, you should already be taken by some predator somehow." He grunted. He let it go and got back in the driver's side of the truck. "I'm going as far as Devil's Stand tonight," he told her. "That's about 60 more miles up this stretch of road." Anna nodded and got into the truck. "Slam it," he told her. "The damned old thing needs repair, but I'm on the road all the time." She slammed it, but it still didn't completely shut. "Go ahead and lock it. Just make sure it doesn't swing open while we're at top speed." It was then that Anna chuckled for the first time. "What is top speed in this old jalopy?" Red smiled. "On a good level stretch of road," he patted the dash, "about 60. But I'm not really in a hurry." "You can camp with me at Devil's Stand or go on from there. I wouldn't recommend that tonight. Forecast says it's going to get down near freezing. And it's Halloween, you know. Samhain, when the Sidhe come out to play." Anna looked at him, curious. "Samhain? She?" He nodded and pulled the truck back on the road. "Stories my grandma used to tell from Ireland. The Sidhe, the Fae, the folk of the fair, you know, fairies, elves and such. They come out in Samhain, or Halloween, and go amongst mortals where they feed. I thought fairies were pleasant, mischievous things, and aren't real." Red never looked at the girl but said, "You never know where the truth lies in a legend or myth, but truth be there." "So, what would these fairies feed on? Hear about killing all over the news and such every Halloween if that is the case." "Oh, it isn't like that at all. As the story goes, there's two kinds of Sidhe, the winter and the summer. Summer is about light and life and passion and growing things. Creation, you know. Summer is there to balance the world against winter, he explained. Okay, then what is the winter for? She asked. Red shrugged. My gran used to say they were there to be the darkness that protects us against the flame of true chaos. Even as summer is about life and bounty, winter is about survival and death. Where the summer court is the stag, winter is the wolf. The stag is passion and plenty, and the wolf is cold logic and survival. Anna decided then that this was just another odd duck. She'd met many on her trip. If you don't mind if I doze off, do you? He looked startled again. If you're comfortable enough falling asleep. I mean, I'm a stranger to you. It's not safe, girl. Anna waved her hand. If you were going to do something, you'd have done it by now. I mean, we are in the desert. We haven't even passed another vehicle. Red just shrugged. Anna, with her suitcase in her lap and her backpack nestled between her head and the door of the cab, she closed her eyes. It was always the same when she tried to sleep. The voices came. They reminded her of her need, of the uncontrollable hunger, and she clutched at the case in her lap. It started not long after she'd run away from home, as usual, with violence. Those stronger always take advantage of people who they think are weaker than themselves. That's the way of the world, the street. And when you choose to live that path, violence and chaos are ways of life. A gang, that's what she thought of them, had taken her from a stash house. Anna had known that if she stayed where those who used drugs, people wouldn't bother her. There'd be no one to come looking for her, no one to try to pull her out of drugs, so she stayed away from them. But the places where addicts slept and preferred to hide, people left those places alone and left the sleeping, drugged, and incapacitated zombies to themselves, for the most part. But a gang, a mixture of Hispanic and black men, had noted that she didn't have the same glassy-eyed and caged look of a normal addict, and they took her. That was when the voices came, and in her fear, they saved her. They showed her how to escape, showed her what she had to do, and in return, she would do something for them. She would do a job, kill a man. All she had to do was take this first step. So she waited. And when the right opportunity presented itself, she killed all 3 men that was guarding her. It was messy. And she'd gotten hurt. She'd gotten careless and let one of them push her against the wall before she had slit his throat. Luckily, they'd gotten careless and left her unbound to sleep. And she'd found a small piece of scrap metal, sharp enough for her purpose. She killed the man that had been left to keep an eye on her. But once done, the guilt of taking human life almost overwhelmed her. She saw herself shoving the blood-slicked metal into her own chest, and the sorrow of what she'd done affected her so much. But the voices whispered again, and she knew what she could do. It was the eyes, they had told her. The guilt was coming from their eyes. They stared empty at her, their souls accusing. She must take from them that window that they peered through, those eyeballs. It was during the process of cutting the first man's eyes from his head that she had experienced her first orgasm. And now she craved the act. She cracked open an eye and saw that Red was watching the road as he drove, his green eyes concentrating. Yeah, she thought, those will do nice. I haven't got any green ones yet. And then she let herself doze. Yet when she woke, it was to a nightmare. She found herself naked and tied spread eagle to stakes in the ground. The ropes were tight and she could not even move her arms at all, or her legs. Red just sat silhouetted against a large bonfire. And though her movement was limited, she could see the tall sandstone pillars of the Devil's Stand National Monument all around her. Red had her case open on his lap. "What the fuck?" she demanded. A malevolent laugh came from Red's direction. He had the cardboard box sitting next to him, the top opened on it. "As a monster of the old world, I must admire what monsters you mortals make for yourselves." "Mortals?" Anna demanded, her mind racing, trying to find a solution to her predicament. The voices had fled, they were gone. Well, I lied to you, see? I misrepresented. I am a RedCap, and they call me Red. Anna got quiet. The guy was crazy. "I know. It will be disappointing that you do not get to cut my beautiful eyes from my head. It looks like you only need a set of greens to complete your collection." He laughed again in the darkness. "Though I never thought I'd keep a collection of victims." "I will kill you," she screamed her defiance into the darkness. "Little mortal monster," Red said, throwing her case aside, small round objects scattering across the desert. "No, those are mine," she screamed. Red's silhouette reached down and pulled something white from the cardboard box and walked toward her. He'd changed. No longer was he of average height, build, or older, but tall, vibrant, and young. His long blonde hair fell from under the dark red cap he wore, his pointed ears sticking from the sides of his hat. "Well, what are you going to do?" Anna asked, frightened and alone, knowing the voices wouldn't come back. "I told you, child." He walked closer with a pure white baseball cap in his hand. "It is Samhain, Halloween. It is time for the she to feed." Her voice shook as she asked the last question she would ever utter. "And what do you feed on?" Red knelt down so that his hauntingly beautiful face was close to hers. "Why, what it always is, child." She was aware of his arm moving swiftly, and that she couldn't see it so swiftly she could barely see the movement, but felt something touch her lightly upon her throat. And then the life's blood fountained from her jugular. She saw the red cap shudder, as if in the same ecstasy she felt herself when cutting a man's eyes from his face. The last thing she knew in the world before she passed out and went to the hell she had made for herself. We feed upon blood, most of us. And it is what you get, little monster, for hunting in my territory. And that is how the serial killer, known in the papers as the Blinder, disappeared from the world of men. No one ever found out that the person who'd killed 37 men and taken their eyes was herself killed by the she, one of the original serial killers, who lives in the darkness and comes out on Samhain, on Halloween, to hunt. The end. This is StoryMan-Jack, and we hope you've enjoyed this program. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And please, most importantly, tell me, good or bad, what you thought about the video. We cannot grow as artists if we can't accept criticism. Again, thank you, and remember, your story is the most important story you will ever tell, so let's make it a great one. Have a great day.